Welcome back. We continue from where we left off, which is developing our tile grid further. Now, when a tile is clicked, it will change color. As usual, we'll create an interface to call our tile events. Name it BP_tile interface. Rename function to tile flip tile. Now we need to add it to our tile actor, as usual. Double-click it to implement the interface function as an event. This event will be called when one of the players clicks on a tile in the grid. Then we switch the tile color depending on which player clicked it. But first, we need to check if the event is called on the server, as we don't want clients to tinker with this important event. This should happen on the server side. Switching the tile color is simple. We just need to change the tile material to the representative player color. But we need to use a multicast event so that it happens for all clients. Create a custom event, name it multicast flip tile, and set its replication to multicast. I use Blueprint Assist plugin, so I can skip adding multicast as it does that for me automatically. Grab tile mesh and drag it to the graph and search for set material function. We already have red and blue materials created. Let's use one of them. Don't forget to compile and save frequently, and navigate to our tile flipper controller. Here, on left mouse click, we get the hit actor under the cursor and call the flip tile event. Navigate to our tile flipper level and open it to test it. It doesn't work as we did not call multicast event. It still did not work. My plan was to show how it works just on the host client, but it didn't work on the host either. So I just continued to find reason. Later in the video, I realized that we did not set the key input for our action input. You don't really need to set mesh component to replicated, but I just did to test if this was a reason it did not work. So let's continue with our click event. Tile flip needs happen on server for it to multicast to both clients. So let's create custom event and set its mode to run on server. Now we will call a server event to trigger the tile event. We remove the client from the equation to reduce the potential for cheating while calling tile flip event. We get an error because dragging from interface call event, we set input of object type, not actor. Let's change that. Refresh nodes to update the node inputs. And it still not work as we have no input key set. Let's watch me try to debug it. I found the issue. So inside tile flippers controls mapping content set left click as key of our left click action. And voila, it works. But if you're following along, you might notice that you need to double-click it for it to change color. This gave me a headache when I was prototyping this gameplay. The issue is with the engine itself. For the mouse button to trigger from a single click, we need to use a plugin that fixes this behavior. The plugin is called Custom Input Mode Game Only. It's free to download from the FAB store. Go ahead and claim it, then install it to the engine. You will need to close the editor after installing it to activate it for our project. After all done and plugin activated, we need to change input mode inside our tile flipper controller to input mode game only custom. And voila again, now we just need to click once for tile to change color. Now, let's see how this behaves for listen server. Set GameNet mode to listen and try it with 2 clients. It works. Clicking on any part of the screen will change the color for both clients. Well, technically on client is also a server, but we'll learn the technicalities as we go. You can see from window names that one is server, one is client. I like to keep host. That's the name for a client who also is a server on the left. Now we need to create the logic for the color to change depending on which player clicked it. For that we will use enumerator. Create folder to store our enumerators and create player index enumerator. Add 2 enumerators, player 1 and player 2. Now we will use this enumerator to select color, depending on player enumerator, or, as we will name it, player index. Add it as input to our tile flip interface function. Also add it to our multicast event. Do a select for tile material and set it index to be player index. Player 1 will be blue color and player 2 will be red. Don't forget to pass player index to multicast event. Drag player index to server event. Let's first test it if it works. Seems good. Now we need to set different indexes for host and client. That we will do in our tile flipper game mode. To set the index, we will use the onPostLogin event. This event triggers when a new player joins the level, and we get their player controller reference. Right-click on it to add call to parent function. And actually, let's add player controller saving on our parent game mode. Add same on post login event. Let's add a get current level name function to make a switch depending on the level name, as we won't always save references. No one will be joining the staging map, which is our menu map, except for the game owner. Drag from return value and add switch on string node. Add pin name and name its staging as our menu map level. Name need to be exact. Now then we open staging map, it will go to this branch, and we do nothing here. But for default value, we save join controller references. Promote new player to a variable. Name it all connected players, and make it of array type. Drag variable to our graph, and use add node to add value to it. Array value will be joining player controller. One will be added to array each time someone joins the level. As this is parent game mode, it will be triggering for each set game mode and add player controller for any map that not excluded with our switch. Let's add print string to see it in action. You see player controller C0 was added, and just as client 1 loaded, we got print for player controller C1. Each player controller will be unique to each player. This all connected players variable we can also access in our child classes of this parent. You can also make them visible if you enable to show inherited variables. I usually don't, as it also shows variables of engine class. Now let's add on logout event to do reverse logic, for then player leaves the level. Let's copy-paste our switch, depending on the level. Now you guessed it, we will be removing added value from all connected players array. There is few options. We will use remove item. It will remove the matching array element. Exiting player controller on logout event is of controller class, so we need to cast it to player controller to be able to connect to remove node. We can convert to pure cast, as it should never fail to cast to base player controller class. Now we have our identifiers for connected players. The engine also handles this in the game state by adding player states to an array, but I sometimes prefer to do some manual work of my own. Now in our tile flipper game mode, we can get all connected players and get array length. I'm adding voiceover post-recording, so I have no idea what I'm showing here, as it was recorded ages ago. But I think I jumped the gun. We first want to assign the player index to the joining player, and we should store it in the player state, which we use as our class for this game mode. In tile flipper player state, add our player index enumerator. This variable needs to be set as replicated, as we will want to know this value on both the server and the client. Now let's create a new blueprint interface to add to the player state, allowing us to set and get the player index without casting. Name it BPI player data. Add function to get and set player index enumerator. Add interface to our tile flipper player state. Now we back on track to set player index for new joining player. Drag it and search for new player state. And now call our set player index event. As this is game mode, all happening on server, only server should be setting such important player data as player index. Now do a select node for player index, and as index use length of our connected player array. This is where I a bit messed up as 0 option should not exist. So for length of 1, then host joins it should be player 1, and for length 2 should be player 2. We'll fix in later videos. Now we finally can get player index to know who clicking the tile. For that we can get player state directly from player controller, as this class is assigned to each player controller and also is unique to each player controller and is replicated to all clients. And actually, let's get the player index on the server. Since we're setting it on the server, we should also get it on the server to make it less likely for the client to change the send index value. We can remove index input. And just to be absolutely safe, let's check if it's the server that is running this event. It works. The host should be blue and the client red if you made the changes I mentioned. If not, we'll fix it once I realize my mistake. In the meantime, I want to say that it takes a lot of time to make these videos. If you like the educational content, please subscribe and leave a like, as that helps get it in front of more people. I would also greatly appreciate support on Ko-Fi, as YouTube brings no financial benefit of this size, but takes a significant amount of time to create those videos. Link in the description. Now let's go back to our game manager to make some changes. So I want to make visual representation of tiles positions. For that, I want to index them visually. And I want to do that because we need to know where the middle tile is to place the camera accordingly. As you can see, with a grid size of 9 tiles, the camera is not adjusted as we have no logic for that just yet. Well, first we need to add text render to our tile. Also, we will be multicasting to both clients. And oh boy, had some issues with it, and it was a small engine overlook on my side. But on that in next video. Create tile index event and make it multicast. Now we have nothing to multicast to, so let's add text render to our tile. Drag text render to our graph and set it text. Add input to tile index of integer value and name it index. Drag index to set text value. We will use this event to set tile index render text, depending on looping of our game master that creates those tiles for our grid. There's probably some equation to do this, but I'm going with my own approach. First, let's call our multicast tile index event and add make literal string function. We will use it to make tile index value. And value will be looping indexes. Make append for our string value. For first appended value, it will be our first loop index, and for second one will be our second loop index. I hope you see where I'm going with this. Like I said, there's probably a simple equation to achieve that, but I've chosen the lazy path. End result of looping indexes string will be our tile index. But no indexes appeared. This is because our text is inside our tile. Place it in position you like and give it a color. Nothing appears again. This is because tile spawns in different direction from our camera. To change camera speed, hold right-click in Scene and use scroll wheel to adjust movement speed. I just wanted to make sure that we don't need to replicate text render component as I enabled it thinking it was the issue. And we don't. Now for last, let's rotate spawn tile to see the indexes. Set Z to 180 for spawn tile to rotate tile toward the camera. For now, this is it. Fix for index multicast will come in next ones and camera setting toward middle index. See you then.